Hi, everyone. My name is Les Skolnick. I'm the Communal Education Networker and Project Manager at the Jewish Education Project in New York City. We work with congregations across North America, most specifically in the New York tri-state area. Congregations, institutions, other Jewish organizations, and I work in the teen department helping congregations and institutions grow their teen engagement strategies, but also working with youth professionals and helping them get better at what they do. Before I did that, I was a Jewish educator and youth worker in congregations for about 10 years and worked with teens in a variety of capacities in both the formal and the informal settings, and also worked in religious schools in all different capacities. I also have a master's degree in education, focusing on special education and specifically in inclusion, and that's what brings us here today. I'm here to talk to all of you about what it means to not only create an inclusive community, but how to use teenagers who are your teen Madrichim to help create that inclusive environment in your community and in your school, and ways that we can effectively train our teens to be good participants, to be good members of the classroom, to be good members of the community, and ways that we can help give them tools to feel like they're being utilized. I'm an inclusionist by nature, and so I really believe in us as Jewish organizations to be able to help our teens as much as possible. And that's sort of how I approach things. Any kid, whose needs can be met, I think is really, really important. One of the questions I often asked when creating teen Madrichim programs is like, what can we do to more formally train our teens, and how do we give them this like high-level experience that so many of our teens expect to get? I think sometimes our schools often use our teens as administrative mostly, but I kind of see that their role is leadership-based, it's administrative, and it can be to take a lead in what's going on in the classroom. And our teens also, in so many ways provide special ed support. They do a lot of one-on-one tutoring, or they work with Hebrew students, or they work with kids who maybe need a little extra push, or they're shadows. And so it became clear to me while we were doing this work that these teens needed this skill set because they were underprepared or they weren't being utilized correctly. So we really, really thought intentionally about ways that we could codify a curriculum and ways that we could really, really utilize the talents, skills, and passions of our teens to work with younger kids in our religious school. That's really how we began to approach this. And one of the things that was really neat for me is as I began to think about taking over at my last position at North Shore Synagogue in Syosset, as I began to think about taking over the special ed administration in the building along with the informal teen and youth piece, it really met my needs and my interests in a really interesting way. So I was able to kind of combine my experience in the religious school along with my experience in the formal space to create this teen training and education program. So why do we utilize our teens? I think there are a lot of great benefits to our teens. It gives them leadership opportunities. They create and have an opportunity to be role models for others in their community, which I think is beneficial for both not only the teens but also the kids that are looking up to them. It increases their connection to Judaism, Jewish identity, Jewish community, their Jewish values, the synagogue, however you sort of define it. Expands their interests in education, special ed, and other fields. So if we have teens that are really interested in working with kids, let's give them that opportunity and preparation for academic and employment opportunities if that's what they're where they're headed. I think it's a great it's almost like a built-in internship program that you can have if you have students who are interested in these particular areas. I love the sort of opportunity for our teens to be leaders and role models in the community, that our kids look up to our teens, but they also have an opportunity to give back to their community and be sort of constants in the lives of the younger kids, and sort of send the message that there are lots of ways to get involved in the synagogue building and ways to have different entry points into their Jewish identity. I always love to start with a little bit of text. Make for yourself a teacher, acquire yourself for a friend, and judge each person favorably. I really think this speaks to the heart of who our Madrichim are. They may see themselves as teachers, but I'm really hoping that our kids see their Madrichim as friends, as role models, as partners, as big brothers and big sisters, and as people who they can rely on and trust, and hopefully that relationship is valued reciprocally. And continuing, why do we continue to utilize them? Our teens get skills in communication, working with both their teachers and with school administration and with their students. They get skills in collaboration. They have to learn how to play nicely with others. They get leadership, certainly leadership skills, problem solving, flexibility, creative thinking. They may get some skills in education and lesson planning, and they may get some skills in reliability and accountability, which I think is also a really important piece for our teenagers. And sometimes not every teacher in the classroom connects with each student. And so having a teen in the room can serve as obviously another set of eyes and another set of ears. And the teen can also be a person who the student might actually confide in. And so sometimes our teens find things out about our students that we don't always necessarily get information on. So our teens actually surprisingly have a really great and easy access point to our students, because that's who our students most often relate to. So they may actually have an opportunity to help impact behavior. They may get an opportunity to help impact and understand something that's going on at home or in another circumstance. Certainly when there are peer-to-peer interactions, our teens often see those things in ways that our teachers and other synagogue staff members don't. As I said, they set an example. They take on job responsibilities, and we really take pride in our kids and the responsibility they take and the accountability that they take. We really try to hammer that home, that our kids, our students, are really, really counting on our teens to show up every week. Our teachers are counting on our teens to show up every week. I'm counting on them, the students actually get really disappointed when their teen, shows up in a haphazard way. And so we want to make sure that the teens understand that they're an example, they're role models, and we want them present and we want them committed. It sets a nice precedent to see teens in the synagogue. I really, really believe that there's a holistic way to include teens into our congregation. Into the life of a congregation, and I really believe that there's a nice feeling when you see teens working intergenerationally, both with older members of the community, but also within our school with younger students. Again, it's another entry point. It's another way to connect our teens to other aspects of synagogue life. And I've heard great stories about teens with special needs that actually were students in the school who had great experiences with their Madrichim, and they return to be very successful Madrichim to work in their school program. And I think that's a really, really telling statement about how powerful that experience can be. Martin Buber, one of my favorite Jewish philosophers, Martin, the world represents something new, something that never existed before, something original and something unique. And if there had been someone like her in the world, there would have been no need for her to be born. We really try to hammer home with our students in our program, not just the education and the other skills that we're giving, but we really try to frame our work in terms of the Jewish values that are inherent in this work. I really believe that a Jewish organization should never say, we can't help your kid. And so all of this inclusion work that we were doing was informed in Jewish values, and a lot of the teaching and the training that we did with our students is informed that way and is framed that way. So I'm bringing a lot of the text, or some of the text anyway, in that I use, and I will also help frame it with some of the Jewish values as well. Keshet, the LGBT inclusion organization from Boston, has a poster with 7 Jewish values of inclusion on them, and it's a really nice starting point for all different kinds of inclusion when you talk about it, not just for students with disabilities, but you talk about it I think in a larger framework for what it means to create an environment where people feel welcomed, people feel accepted, and people feel like they are complete and whole members of the community. We talk about kavod, and we talk about shalom bayit and b'tselem Elohim, respecting, that everyone has a spark of divine in them, a communal responsibility to look after one another, to say, to watch the way we speak about other people. It's a great one for kids. Loving your neighbor as yourself, and solidarity, the idea that we have a responsibility to look out for one another and to be allies and to be the upstanders, and to make sure that when we see acts of bullying and intolerance, to really, really stand up for that. And that takes a community to really, really live those values and to really, I guess, live up to this higher standard together. I'm a real believer that inclusion is good for everyone, that inclusion is good not only for kids who are being included in our school, but it's good for the kids who are doing the including. The typical students who are in our classrooms really get a really nice lesson in what it means to work with people who are different from them. They learn all kinds of great leadership skills, and they come out, I think, better students and better people for it. And of course, the students who are being included get all kinds of really great social skills, positive social interactions, new friendships, and and a positive feeling that their community accepts them and believes in them. Creates a culture where everyone's needs are met, allows children and adults to gain a realistic understanding of what people with disabilities are like. It humanizes the experience, and I think that that's huge. Opportunities for positive social interaction, self-esteem, social skills, kindness, patience, and respect for diversity and appreciation for differences in others. Educate a young person in his or her own way, and therefore when he or she ages, he or she will not swerve or deter from it. I really, really like this. It really speaks to the heart of, I think, what inclusion also is, and that's really beginning with a student-centered focus on education in mind, and really thinking about the whole student and not just teaching your material one way, that each of our students are individuals, whether with disabilities or neurotypical or physically typical, whatever. Every student is an individual, learns differently, and has a uniqueness to them that could allow an education to be individually tailored. And it takes, I think, really special educators, both educators in the classroom, teachers, and teens, to really get to the heart of who our learners are. So how do we structure a Madrichim program? We saw at North Shore our program sort of in a three-tiered curriculum. One was our teens were getting leadership skills as ambassadors of our program, and what does it mean to give back to a community? So it's leadership and service. There's an education piece where they're learning about education theory and education and classroom skills. They specifically get special needs training because that's often a huge part of what our teens do, and it's a piece of what I feel like I can bring to our teens. It allows them to be placed in different areas of our school. If we know that we have teens who have different interests, we have some teens who want to be in a Hebrew classroom, we have some teens who don't want to be in a Hebrew classroom and want to be in Judaic, we have some teens who don't want to be in a classroom at all and work in the office, we have some who have interests in song leading, art, in all different affinity areas. And so if we can make natural connections that way and pair them with teachers who share those passions, that's a really huge thing. And we certainly have teens who identify specifically that they would like to work with children with special needs. It's interesting because even the teens who work in the office are, responsible for being eyes and ears. They often are the ones running around the building and see the kid in the hallway who, is having a meltdown or who seems a little bit lost or out of place. And, all of our teens are eyes and ears and a line of defense And like we said before, it's nice when you have that cadre of people who can sort of contribute and be the ones who are looking out. And it was important to us to formalize this curriculum and use different resources. I like the Madrichim Manual by Lisa Bob Howard, although there were a couple of other books out there, the Madrichim Handbook. Some of the materials I saw were designed for higher level, like the education director or the teacher themselves. The Madrichim Manual actually is really terrific because I think it is really teen-friendly and frames things and contextualizes it in a really nice way, but also identified several of the core areas that I had been thinking were necessary to creating this Madrichim program sort of without me even looking at the book. So once I was able to see that, I kind of figured I was on the right track. So again, it's the leadership piece, the classroom administration piece, the education piece, and the educating children with special needs piece. And that sort of allows us to create a more formalized curriculum for what we wanted our teens to get trained in. You have to ask a lot of, I think, important questions. Are there age requirements? Our school allows anybody post B'nai Mitzvah to work. Our 8th graders were volunteers only, and our older students were allowed to be paid if they wanted. We had about a split of 50-50, for students who identified that they wanted to get paid versus ones that wanted to come in and volunteer. Our teens get really great experience, and I write, a wonderful college recommendation for our students who really give back to our program and who volunteer. And a lot of them need those community service hours. But we also believe really clearly, I believe really clearly, that if you're able to compensate a teen monetarily for their work, that reliability, that job training, that accountability piece is huge, and that reward of, even a nominal stipend is significant in teaching and reinforcing those lessons of accountability. So we want to codify that commitment requirement. We want to make sure that parents consent and buy in. We want to make sure that there are really clear expectations. And, of course, the compensation piece, if you can do it, money is great, but at the very least, those community service hours really rack up and are a really nice draw for teens who need them. We thought it was really important to formalize an application process, again, to demonstrate the commitment that we thought was important in the teens that wanted to work for us. It allowed us to collect their information, their basic demographic information, but also the areas that they're interested in. We had them answer a few questions, why they wanted to do this, who were the teachers in their lives that really left an impact on them and why. Questions like that, I really wanted them to think about why they were there, what they wanted out of the experience, and what areas of school they might be interested in helping out in. What schedule they were at, because our school met on different days. We really just wanted to, again, codify that commitment and really make sure that they understood what they were getting into. It professionalized the process, and it gave us a really much more clearer picture of who that team was and what their motivation was for working. Training is an important piece, and this goes back to the curricular piece. What are the school's needs? What kinds of classes do you have? We know we're not creating other special education teachers, but we also want to move our Madrichim past this idea that they're just the kid in the classroom. The teen is not just the kid in the classroom who takes their kids to the bathroom or gets chalk or runs errands for the teacher. Again, we know that we're not creating a special ed teacher overnight, but we want our teens to walk out with a specific skill set. But the school might have needs in either self-contained classes, in an inclusion-based class, where the teen is working with a group of students or the whole class. The teen might be working as a one-to-one aide or a shadow. And the teen might also be working in the youth group setting and helping with the social skills piece, which I think is also really huge. One note about working with one-to-one aides, I think it's really important that the teen who's working as a one-on-one doesn't always need to be directly on top of the kid the student that they are assigned to. It actually almost serves to stigmatize and identify that student as a student who needs that extra support. But a teen can be much more effective if they are working with the whole class, even if they're assigned as a one-on-one. That you can pay specific attention to a specific student without constantly identifying that one particular student needs extra support and extra help. So I think that that's a really important piece of what it means to train and what it means to give our teens that skill set. But again, it's not just the academic piece, it's the social skills piece too, which I think can be a really great thing for a teen to model for younger students. What are the things that we want to possibly train on? Certainly different learning styles. A teen can be useful in helping to create adaptive lesson plans and adapt materials. If we have a student who has difficulty with reading, they may be able to, cater to a different learning style in an auditory way or in a visual way. Certainly in sensitivity training, understanding what differences look like, differentiated instruction, I kind of touched on that, the idea that materials and lessons can be adapted to help particular students learn. What does it mean to reinforce positive behavior? This could be huge, that you have students in the classroom who act and reinforce behavior or who understand where behavior potentially could come from. The behavior piece is a huge piece, and again, they can really be successful in helping manage the classroom and manage behavior if it's done appropriately. Teaching our teens about person-first language, modeling not just what they practice, but also what they preach and then how they speak about the people that they're working with. I'm schooled in universal design for learning, the concept that inclusion begins by teaching all of your learners and planning your lessons with all different types of learning styles in mind. So having, this is a bigger idea, but it may not just be the teen, but it could be the teacher, also thinking about ways to incorporate a teen into the lesson plan who, again, if you have a student who has difficulty with their reading, is there an audio, center that you could set up, or is there a way, for a teen to go with a student to use a computer lab and input something into a computer or play something in a tactile way? Positioning and prompting, I think that's huge. Where does the teen sit in the classroom? Are they up in the front next to the teacher, or are they sitting with students and prompting and reinforcing and helping to redirect students who are off task or who maybe need a little bit of a helping hand? I love to walk around and always observe and notice where my teens are positioned in the classroom, because I think it really sends a very different message when the teen is in the group versus up in front of the classroom. And different teachers have different styles, and different classrooms look and sound a little bit different depending on what's going on. But generally speaking, I really, really prefer when my teens are in it and not off to the side. It also makes the teen feel like they're part of the classroom culture and the classroom environment, and that they have a place and they belong in that community. And they're not just the glorified babysitter who's doing errands for the teacher. Behavior analysis, I really try to spend a little bit of time with each of my teens trying to talk about where student behavior comes from and why students act the way that they do. And this goes to the next point of understanding the difference between a diagnosis and a behavior, that not every teen needs or can know what a specific student with special needs is diagnosed with, but that we try really hard, and I actually use this in my pedagogy as well, that I try to understand that there are differences between, but that no matter what, even if a diagnosis exists or none at all, that behavior comes from a place, and that behavior can be worked on and can be adapted and can be dealt with. And once we start thinking about a behavior-centered approach to classroom management and I don't want to say discipline, but management, we really begin to think much more about what we see as opposed to what we know, and that I think is a really, really big help and a really interesting place to start. As an aside, I like to tell people that whenever I see behavior going on in the classroom, I think for the most part, I heard this from someone, that every student is either hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, the HALT method. If you understand that there's a way to sort of combat each of those behaviors. Also, if you know that a student is acting out every time it comes time to read Hebrew, maybe you can start asking what's going on there to help alleviate a fear or to help provide the right support where maybe that student needs a little bit of something to calm their anxiety or to help them to feel more at ease. And the team can actually really work on that and pull the kid out of the classroom or not, depending on where that anxiety is stemming from. And again, classroom management and education and lesson planning. Giving the students feeling like they're able to contribute to what's being taught in the classroom, but also if they want these practical skills for down the road when they may take on their own classes or continue to work. I made great extra money in college teaching Hebrew school. While all my friends were working harder jobs for way more hours, I taught Hebrew school for 2 hours a week or 4 hours a week and made great money, and it was all because of the experience I had working as a madrich in my religious school, and it led to pretty much the work that I'm doing now in a large part. So I'm really thankful for the skills that I got in my program, and I really hope that my teens walked out with a similar kind of feeling. And again, I'm hoping that the skills are applicable and they're practical for them. The ongoing support piece is really important. Really important to know who supervises the Madrichim. Our building was really lucky to have an assistant director of the religious school / a full-time youth professional who was also supervising special ed, and I was able to sort of comprehensively think about all of those things in one way, but it may not look like that, and I recognize that not every building has that ability, but knowing that that your Madrichim might have one particular person who supervises them could be really important. I was really fortunate that I was able to serve as this assistant director who could often be where our religious school director wasn't, and so I could sort of serve as her second set of eyes and second set of hands, and I could focus really on student issues and Madrichim issues while our director was off doing what she did during the course of the morning, whether it be in her office with a parent or leading a particular programmatic aspect. I could float and be in classrooms or working with a kid who was having a meltdown in the hallway. And it's really important to know that not only am I supervising these madrichim or that person is there, but that person is also there as backup in case that there's a situation that they don't know how to handle. So I think that's a really big piece. Making sure that there are regular check-ins with teens and supervising those and their supervising teachers. Checking in with the teachers to make sure that the teen is getting the right kind of support, because it's really a partnership between the building administration, the school administration, and the teacher in the classroom. Everyone sort of has to be on board with that training piece, and making sure that the training is ongoing, that we started, it's not just a 1 or 2 hour orientation session, but that the curriculum happens in an ongoing way, or maybe even in an informal way after some of the more formal pieces happen, and really giving either evaluation or regular feedback for what teens could do better, or ways that they may improve and grow. I think that's a really, really, really important piece. So teens can be a part of so many different parts of your school. They can teach and they can plan if you under the right supervision. I think they can certainly lead pieces of lessons, especially a do now or a wrap up piece. Games, they can be incorporated into so many different aspects of interactive lesson planning. They can serve as another teacher, another set of eyes and ears for evaluation. They can do one-on-one tutoring. They can shadow, and again, they can also, if that person is a shadow, they can also sort of be a conduit to the rest of the class to make sure that everyone's on task, but also that kid that they're shadowing is not necessarily sticking out as much for needing an individual shadow. They can be administrative, they can be office assistants, they can be specialist assistants, and certainly they can be useful in Hebrew help by breaking the class into to smaller reading groups, or administering some kind of learning activity, or in a tactile way, or they might be the one on the floor, which is often useful for teachers. Again, having that teen in that classroom can really, really help kids who learn in different ways, or who need to learn outside of the classroom, or who need a different kind of environment, or who might just need a break in some way. So they can certainly be the person who escorts and walks around the building with a student who's having a difficult day, but that's not all they have to do either. Finally, I really was thinking about how we deal with teens and issues of confidentiality that might arise when it comes to particular student issues. As a special ed person, and often the point person in the education department on special ed, I was the one doing a lot of, along with our special ed coordinator, I was doing a lot of the intake and initial consultations with parents and families on what supports each child needs. I was requesting copies of the IEP. There's often a gap in our schools on what information our parents will share with our kids, I think, and because our kids don't want, our parents don't always want their kids to stick out, and they want their kid to feel quote unquote normal in certain environments, and so we have to kind of work a little bit harder to get that information. It's another reason why I'm really a believer in a behavior-based approach to classroom management, because it really allows you to kind of take a step back and say, here's the behavior that I see. How can I affect the change, and not necessarily here's what's going on. But again, the intake piece is important. It's getting to know not just a diagnosis, but getting to know who the kid is and what ways they learn best. It's getting to know what their interests are. It's getting to know the whole person as opposed to getting to know a diagnosis. Information in every IEP is confidential, and so we have to not only get different kinds of permissions. We have to get often permission to call school and speak to the special ed teacher or the school psychologist. We have to get permission also sometimes to share that information with different people around the building. I will never share a specific diagnosis with a teacher or a teen until I get that explicit permission to do so. And sometimes if you have a really great parent, the parent will say, please share this information, because it will be the most helpful thing that you can do for my kid. I had a really great parent in the last school I worked at who gave a letter that she writes to every teacher that her child has, and it outlines, who he is. He's on the autism spectrum, and so he's talking about. This information is really helpful in helping this teen and the teacher to teach the kid appropriately and to understand who they are and what their motivations are and what are the things that they love and how they best learn. This is a really wonderful family and a really wonderful parent who really gets it. So that information is confidential, and you have to be able to share that appropriately or not at all. If that's the case, again, could we work to behavior and not diagnosis? And our teens have to be trustworthy to not share that information if they're trusted to be given that information, and when we have the permission to give it to them. And again, sometimes it's in the positioning that we don't want every child in the classroom to know always who the kids are that they're sort of being assigned to work with, because we don't necessarily want them to stick out all the time. So sometimes, the teacher might work with a different reading group, or the Madrich might work with a different reading group depending on what's going on. Sometimes I like to work with as a classroom teacher, I like to work with some of the more slower learners, and sometimes I like to work with some of the more advanced learners to vary what kinds of attention our students are getting. Just a few resources for you. As I mentioned, the Madrichim manual, the Madrichim handbook, which is a little bit dated but still works pretty well. The Toolbox for Teachers and Mentors is a great book that's really good for education directors and maybe a little bit higher level. And of course, one of my favorite organizations in the New York area is Matan, who is doing some really great work with children with special needs in all kinds of support services and training and things like that. And there's their website for you. And I always love to leave my teens with this quote from Abraham Joshua Heschel. because I really think this frames nicely the sort of responsibilities that they have for being in their role as Madrichim. Everything depends on the person who stands in front of the classroom. The teacher is not an automatic fountain from which intellectual beverages may be obtained. The teacher is either a witness or a stranger. To guide a pupil into the promised land, the teacher must have been there themselves. When asking themselves, do I stand for what I teach? Do I believe what I say? The teacher must be able to answer in the affirmative. What we need more than anything else is not textbooks, but text people. It is the personality of the teacher which is the text that pupils read, the text that they will never forget. Our teens are living proof and great role models and great examples for our text people. They are oftentimes the people in our building with the most ruach, the most passion, the most care for what they do. And I want our kids, our younger kids, to see that and to feel that passion and ruach passed on to them through our teens and through their commitments to their Jewish life, to the building, to their passions for working with children, through their passions for just being good citizens of the world. And I think Heschel really hits that a teacher really embodies a good teacher really embodies the values, and oftentimes the subject matter that they teach is in their humanity and not just in their formalized curriculum. So there's me, and if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me. As I say, I work at the Jewish Education Project here in New York City. I'm easily accessible, and if there's any way that I can be a resource, either in helping to train or in some issues of special education or Jewish education, I really look forward to being in touch and continuing continuing a relationship. Thanks very much.